The suburban streets of Willow Creek looked peaceful on paper. Tree-lined avenues, perfectly manicured lawns, and identical beige houses with matching mailboxes. But beneath that picture-perfect surface, something had begun to rot. My name is Ryan Kessler, retired Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant. 22 years of service, 3 combat deployments, and a chest full of ribbons I rarely talked about. After leaving the Corps, I moved my wife Elena and our 2 kids into Willow Creek for the quiet life and good schools. I kept my firearms secured exactly as the law required, locked, documented, and used only for range practice and home defense training. I believed in rules. I had lived by stricter ones my entire adult life. What I didn't expect was that some of the people enforcing the rules here would make them up as they went along. It started with letters. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association had always been strict, but after new board members were elected, the tone changed. New fines appeared for everything from the color of your welcome mat to the brand of grass seed you used. Then came the Community Safety Initiative. A glossy brochure arrived in every mailbox claiming that certain visible security measures were harming property values and community harmony. The target was clear: firearms. I read the letter once, then again. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. All residents with firearms were to voluntarily register them with the HOA security team and agree to periodic wellness checks. Refusal would result in escalating fines and possible legal action through the association's private attorneys. I crumpled the paper and dropped it in the recycling bin. That evening, I sat on the back porch with Elena. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in soft oranges and reds. "They can't do this," she said quietly. "They're going to try," I replied. "But they're about to learn the difference between authority and power." 2 weeks later, they came. It was a Saturday morning. I was in the garage organizing tools when the doorbell rang. Elena opened it and called for me. When I stepped into the foyer, I saw 2 men in dark tactical-style uniforms standing on my porch. They had badges that looked official at a glance, gold shields with Willow Creek Public Safety engraved on them. One carried a clipboard. The other had a body camera mounted on his vest. "Mr. Kessler?" the taller one said. "We're with HOA Security Enforcement. We have a compliance order to inspect and secure any firearms on the premises." I studied them carefully. Their uniforms had no department name from any recognized law enforcement agency. No visible jurisdiction patches. The badges were generic. "I don't recognize your authority," I said calmly. "Please leave my property." The second man stepped forward. "Sir, the HOA covenants you signed when you bought the house grant us enforcement powers. This is a civil matter. We can issue citations and, if necessary, coordinate with local law enforcement for removal of prohibited items." "Prohibited by whom?" I asked. "By the community standards we are sworn to uphold." I kept my voice even, the way I had been trained during tense negotiations overseas. "I am a lawful gun owner. My firearms are stored in full compliance with federal and state law. You have no warrant. You are not sworn peace officers. You are private citizens wearing costumes. Step off my porch." The first man smiled thinly. "We tried to do this the easy way." They left, but not before slapping a bright orange violation notice on my door. That was the beginning. Over the next 10 days, the pressure escalated. Fines appeared in my mailbox, $500 per day for noncompliance. Anonymous complaints were filed with the city about illegal weapons at my address. A drone hovered over my backyard twice. Elena caught someone photographing our windows from the street. I began documenting everything. Military protocol: observe, record, report, escalate through proper channels. I installed additional security cameras with clear views of the front and back. I kept a detailed log with timestamps, descriptions, and photographs. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in homeowners association disputes and forwarded every notice. But the fake cops returned on a Thursday afternoon. This time there were 4 of them. 2 vehicles with magnetic signs reading Willow Creek Enforcement Unit. They carried zip-tie handcuffs and evidence bags. The lead officer, a stocky man who introduced himself as Captain Harlan Reeves, held up a thick folder. We have a signed order from the HOA board authorizing us to enter and remove all unregistered firearms for safekeeping, he announced. You can either cooperate or we'll call the sheriff's department and let them handle it. I stood in the doorway, arms loose at my sides. Elena had taken the kids to her sister's house the moment she saw the cars pull up. Good. Captain Reeves, I said, reading the name tape on his vest, let me explain something to you. I spent over 2 decades upholding the Constitution. Part of that document protects my right to keep and bear arms. Another part protects me from unreasonable searches and seizures. You are attempting both. I have already notified the county sheriff's office, my attorney, and the state attorney general's Consumer Protection Division about this harassment. Reeves's jaw tightened. This is private property enforcement. The sheriff won't interfere. Actually, I replied, they will. Because you're committing color of law violations, impersonating law enforcement. That's a federal issue. One of the men behind him shifted uncomfortably. I continued, voice steady. I am now activating my personal incident command protocol. Every action you take from this moment is being recorded on multiple systems. I have already sent a packet to the FBI field office detailing your uniforms, vehicle descriptions, and the false authority you're claiming. If you cross this threshold without a legitimate warrant signed by a judge, you will be trespassing and attempting an illegal seizure. Reeves stared at me for a long moment. The afternoon sun glinted off his fake badge. You're bluffing, he said. Try me. For nearly 40 minutes we stood there in a tense standoff. I refused to close the door. I refused to let them in. Instead, I explained clearly and without emotion every statute and case law precedent that applied. I cited the Fourth Amendment. I cited the Supreme Court decisions on HOA overreach. I cited the difference between civil covenants and criminal impersonation of officers. Neighbors began gathering at the end of the driveway, watching silently. Phones were out. People were filming. Then the real authorities arrived. 2 county sheriff's deputies pulled up, lights off but expressions serious. I had called them earlier that morning as a precaution, giving them a full briefing and the case number my lawyer had opened. The deputies spoke first with Reeves and his team, then with me. The conversation was short. The captain was informed that his badges and uniforms violated local ordinances regarding impersonation of law enforcement. The HOA had no power to seize legally owned property. The deputies instructed the fake enforcement team to leave immediately and not return. As they climbed back into their vehicles, Reeves shot me a venomous look. This isn't over, he muttered. I looked him dead in the eye. For you it is. But I knew he was right about one thing. It wasn't over. That night, I activated the second phase of the protocol. I had spent my career solving problems through preparation and persistence, not just force. The next morning, I filed formal complaints with every relevant agency: the state attorney general, the county prosecutor, the Better Business Bureau, and the state real estate commission that oversaw HOA governance. My lawyer drafted a demand letter to the Willow Creek HOA board demanding they dissolve their so-called public safety unit and issue a public apology. Then came the community meeting. The monthly HOA gathering that month was packed. I arrived early and sat in the second row. When the board tried to skip over the new business portion, I stood up. Point of order, I said, voice carrying through the room. Under the association bylaws, any resident may address the board on matters of enforcement abuse. For the next 20 minutes, I presented my evidence. Not with anger, but with the calm precision of a briefing officer. I showed photographs of the fake uniforms. I played audio recordings of the men claiming police powers they didn't have. I displayed the mounting fines and the legal opinions from 2 different attorneys stating the HOA's actions were unenforceable and potentially illegal. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Other residents began sharing their own stories: fines for political signs, threats over backyard grills, pressure to remove American flags that were too large. The board president, a thin man named Richard Lang, tried to shut it down, but the room had turned. By the end of the night, a petition with over 200 signatures circulated calling for the resignation of the entire board and the immediate disbandment of the enforcement unit. The real change came 3 weeks later. The county prosecutor announced an investigation into the Willow Creek HOA for potential fraud and civil rights violations. Several board members resigned quietly. The public safety team was dissolved. All fines against me were dropped and refunded. I never had to raise my voice. I never had to touch a weapon. I simply applied the same principles I had learned in the Marine Corps: gather intelligence, secure the perimeter, maintain discipline, and use overwhelming documentation instead of force. Elena and I sat on the porch the evening after the final board meeting. The kids were playing in the yard. The air smelled of cut grass and distant rain. "You really did it," she said, leaning against my shoulder. "I just followed protocol," I replied. "The same one that kept me alive for 22 years. Know your rights. Document everything. Stay calm. Escalate properly. Never let them set the terms of engagement." She smiled. "You know they're already calling you the gun guy in the neighborhood chat." I laughed quietly. "They can call me whatever they want, as long as they remember that a free man's home is still his castle, and some castles come with veterans who know exactly how to defend them the right way." Months later, Willow Creek passed new bylaws. Real ones. The kind that protected both community standards and individual rights. The fake cops never returned. And I went back to my quiet life, taking my kids to the range on weekends, teaching them responsibility, and reminding them that freedom isn't free, but it is worth defending with patience, knowledge, and principle. The beige houses still looked the same from the outside. But inside, something had changed. People remembered that rules only work when they are applied equally, and that sometimes the strongest defense isn't louder or meaner. It's simply better prepared.